INSIP, Board of Police Commissioners and Traffic Authority. It is 6:03. We are opening the meeting. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from May 2nd, 2017.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Yep, second.
All those in favor? Unanimous?
Thank you.
Second section is public comment. Is there anyone here that wishes to be heard? Anyone from the department? Guys? Sure? Okay. Financial report.
Financial report, we're coming down to the final weeks of the budget for this fiscal year. We're at approximately 80% of the current budget used, and I anticipate that will remain within budget for the remainder of the month to close out the fiscal year. Some overtime costs during the past month included coverage at the town election, at the Amity referendum, and then also we did do the Memorial Day weekend, 2 days of that DOT highway safety grant, of which 75% will be reimbursed to the town. And finishing out this month, Janice, the deputy chief, and I will be working on any last purchase orders that come up to get them done and remain in compliance with the finance department's year-end deadlines. I don't really see any foresee or anticipate any problems that'll end up during the last month of the budget. We should be good and finish out within budget. That's it for the financial report.
Does that reimbursement go into the department as revenue?
I believe so. Is that how it works for you usually in the past?
I truthfully don't know where it is. It might just go right into the general fund. The money that comes back, unless it offsets over time.
Right, that's just not necessarily fair to the department when
Yeah.
they're looking at what we're spending and what we're generating.
Because we'll submit a financial report at the end of this month. It's due
Right.
for those 2 days, and then the other remaining 5 days will be put in at the end of September when the grant's done. Because
Right.
we do Memorial Day here. It ends one period that, we have to send in all figures. And then we'll do July 4th, and we'll do Labor Day. And then right after the Labor Day, that month after that, it'll be due for the second portion of the month.
I only ask because my recollection is that the Amity SRO reimbursement from
Goes into
this budget is revenue. That's what I was told.
Correct.
So I was wondering if that was the same procedure for
And
them.
I'll find out from Tony tomorrow. I don't know. It's the first one for me, so.
Is there anything?
I do have a quick question. So, you have 2 more pay periods in the year? What's your average?
Well, one and a partial.
One and a partial, because what's the
And that's
30th is the middle of the week, right? Do you cut off on the 30th? Is that how you do your payroll?
No, the final
You do it Friday to
payroll,
Friday?
actually, the very last one goes through 13 days of June and 1 day of July, and we split off the 1 day.
Okay, so they bifurcate that day. What's your average payroll? Is there an average? I mean, off the top of your head, I don't need an exact, you don't know?
I don't have a.
Okay, that's fine, you can just give me a call with this. It's nothing that you have to go look up right now, but I'm just kind of curious where we're going to be at the end of the year. 307,000, you have 2 pay periods. So I'm just wondering.
There's a surplus there.
What's that?
There's a surplus there.
There is a surplus. Well, that's why I was wondering what your
I was going by the percentage, it has 78%,
Right,
so I
78.4.
figured there was enough there to cover, I don't know the exact number.
Yeah, that's why I was kind of curious. All right. It's easy to divide out. So. Okay, thanks, I'm fine with it.
Anything else? Matt?
No.
Yes, I do.
You need a motion to accept the report?
Second.
Second, all those in favor? Unanimous?
Thank you.
The deputy chief and followed by the lieutenant will give you the criminal activity and motor vehicle activity.
During the month of May, we had 1 burglary. It was on Peck Hill Road. ISU is working on it, and they have a known suspect, but they're still waiting pending DNA results to come back. Regarding that same burglary, they're also working with authorities in Richmond, Rhode Island, Stoning PD, and Waterford PD regarding that the suspect that they believe is involved in that, to solve burglaries both in Rhode Island and other area towns.
Did you say they made an arrest or had a suspect? I'm sorry.
They have a suspect.
They have a suspect.
They know who's involved with these burglaries, but, they're, like, again, they're waiting for the DNA results to come back from the state, and then they're working with those 3 towns to solve additional cases, before they go forward. Like the chief said, we had a DWI enforcement grant on the 28th and the 29th, which produced quite a bit of activity, but we had a couple of criminal arrests on the first night. We had a criminal arrest regarding interfering with a police officer, and then we had we're going to have a warrant pending on some additional charges for risk of injury to a minor and numerous motor vehicle violations on, that was just a result of one stop. During the period, we had 17 motor vehicle stops on that day, and then on the, as well as a DWI arrest. On the 29th, we had a drug arrest. Again, we had an additional 17 motor vehicle stops, 6 motor vehicle violations, 1 drug arrest, 2 speeding, and 8 warnings.
Hey, Rick,
We had
just showcasing ignorance, and I apologize, but you had the DUI as listed as 1 on the monthly statistic, and then you had intoxicated person listed as 1. Those are separate?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yeah. DWI would have been the motor vehicle charge.
All right.
We investigated a stolen vehicle. It was actually out of Beecher Road. It was recovered in Hamden. It was found due to a GPS location system that was in the vehicle. But as a result of that recovery, it helped locate 4 additional vehicles that had been stolen and left in New Haven. So ISU was working with New Haven to take care of those recovered motor vehicles. As for the high school, early in the month, I think at the last meeting I indicated to you that we had a high school threatening involving a firearm on the 6th of May, but it was closed out successfully before the following date for school. The SRO, working with Orange PD and school administration, through the investigation, they were to determine that it wasn't a credible threat, but the student was arrested for a breach of peace. Some of the other things that the SRO is, he has his daily traffic duties. He's been involved in issues ranging from expulsion hearings with the administration. There was an Amity School student arrested in Milford. He worked with that with Milford PD. There's been a couple of larcenies. He had to respond to some fire alarms at the school, referrals to juvenile court, assisting school counselors and assisting students in school projects that were probably or are related to law enforcement issues. Those are just to name a few, and that's the activity report.
So for me, for the officers, again, overall stops and activity was up from the previous month. Looking good. If you guys have any questions?
Ray, you said that one of the days was 17 stops. How does that compare to typical?
Both days were 17.
17 each. Okay, that's
17 each stop. And I think even though there was, there was quite a few activity during those 2 days. Like the lieutenant said, the activity was for the officers in general is really up, I should say.
How does that compare to a typical weekend per day? 17 stops in a day.
Oh, that's not a typical weekend.
Well, what would be a typical number?
Yeah, that's because these officers, and I know we have at least one of them right here, Officer Leslie. I mean, you go out there and they don't have to worry about responding to police calls. They just go out there and they can just concentrate on stopping cars. And like I said, I think there was 4 officers total that worked during that period, and they worked hard. Very beneficial having them out there. And like we've said in the past, that having those 2 officers extra at night during those nighttime periods, it kind of enhances the patrol division, which could have been 2 or 3 officers.
But if 17 is a high number because the officers are able to focus.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
What's a normal number? 8?
No. What do you say, mixed stops at night?
4, 6 stops,
4 or 6 stops?
tops.
Answer your question?
Tops.
Busy night, they may not make any stops at all.
Right, what did we do for years? 299. That's 11 months. Right, am I reading that? And you
Yes,
had 80 And you had 85 in just a month of May.
yes.
So May was an exceptional month.
Based upon that weekend detail.
Not necessarily the weekend. Because if you look at them, you go right down. Officer Kubik went from 5 to 10. Joe Kubik went from he had an increase of 1. Tony DiMatteo went from 5 to 9. Officer Lynch, who was one of the guys that worked on the detail, he went from 1 arrest, which he usually doesn't do any patrol, to 22. So he was very active during the DWI arrest. Kevin Prentice, 21 to 34. Calabrese, 33 to 20, went down a little bit, but that's still high. Most of them, Penalino went from 2 to 25, but he had vacation that previous month. I just mentioned Officer Luzzy, he went from 11 to 26. Everybody went up.
I spoke to the lieutenant and the deputy chief, and they spoke with the supervisors, and trickled down throughout the men, some concerns about activity, and so noted, and it looks like we're on a good upswing. Lieutenant
I mean, that's a real
will monitor.
That's a real positive move, because assuming this is 11 months, right, which I think the activity for motor vehicles is 11 months. I mean, I'm just doing the math in my head, but I would think that comes to like 27 stops a month in motor vehicles. And,
No, these are
Am I right?
start in January.
okay, in January,
This
so,
is just 5 months.
okay, so 5 months?
Yeah.
Okay. So 5 months you're doing 40, right?
No,
Or no, I'm sorry,
60.
60. 60.
versus
You're doing
85.
60 and 85.
It's a big difference.
They're all in double figures almost.
Yeah, that's.
You just have to encourage them to keep it up.
That and the weather should,
The weather will affect it, sure.
Yeah, sure, it's a lot easier in May, I would think, a lot more activity in May than it would be in January, right? Just because of the weather.
Plus, not to take away from their
No, I mean, they've been exceptionally, exceptionally
not to
aggressive.
take away from their activity, is that it's been a relatively slow month. Like I said, we only had 1 burglary. So when these officers are allowed,
Right.
if they're not busy with other things, they're allowed to go out and do get that activity. If they're not, I mean, even though they might be energetic about doing more motor vehicle, but if they don't have the opportunity to do it, you're going to see the figures are going to be low. If we had 3 or 4 burglaries, which we have in the past, I mean, these guys are going to be tied up all night. It's
No,
just-
it makes sense, it's,
I'm just looking to compare this to the past, to see where the 17 fit in. That's all. Any other questions? Motion?
Motion to accept the report?
Second? All those in favor? Okay. MOU. Report of the Chief's report. So Dr. Freed had sent me some language that she wanted me to include. She sent it in a format that I could not print.
okay.
So unfortunately, I'm hoping she sent you a copy as well.
No.
Sorry about that. Well, I know she wanted to include
Right,
it.
so then for the time being, you want to table this?
Were they looking to do it? I mean, she spent the time doing it. I tried
Right.
several times. I'm not that sophisticated to be able to figure it out.
Okay.
How to download that. Do you think that Bob was looking for a response this meeting, or do you think he
He
waited?
had a board meeting up in the next week or two, so he thought if this was okay with our board, he'd send it to their board. He was hoping to get it in for July 1st.
Right, and our meeting is when in
the
July?
6th.
11.
So, when is it,
The 11th.
Oh, yes.
Well, I mean, the school year's over, right? I guess
Yeah.
anyway.
So
So if we
at
can
this
bring
point,
it.
it's been
I know
quite some time. so-
July is probably going to be a busy meeting, based upon my understanding.
Yes.
Some other, but
Yes.
I guess we'll just pile on anyway.
Okay. So if you get that to me, we'll try
I will.
to take a look at that.
the next meeting is July 11th.
July 11th?
According to.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Really?
Because
Because of the holiday.
Okay.
The next topic that I had was the enhanced fire department dispatch protocol. So for some time now, the fire department has expressed their concerns. We've been addressing concerns associated with fire dispatch. This is something that, it's not new. It's something that we've been working on for some time now. Currently, all of our dispatchers everyone's state certified. And in addition to maintaining the standards set forth by the state, we're all one step, our dispatchers are all one step above. Each dispatcher is trained and certified in EMD, which is Emergency Medical Dispatch. For several months, I've been working with the fire chief on some possible solutions to address their concerns and possibly enhance fire dispatch. During that time, we've modified and revised some of the written protocols pertaining to fire dispatch, and we purchased and installed a net clock to synchronize all of our times between both agencies, which was an issue at one point. The fire department is requesting and seeking to have additional information relayed to them as they respond to a call. They want the dispatcher to try to field some extra questions and at the same time get that out to them, so when they respond to a call or respond to the firehouse to get their apparatus, they'll have more of a feeling of what they're responding to. So for several months now, we explored some different options as how we might possibly do this. The first possibility we looked at was that the fire department would actually, or could actually, provide us with questions, specific questions that they write, that they want asked, and we can incorporate them in our protocol and use that as a guide. Some common calls that would be specific to Woodbridge and specific to the types of calls that they commonly respond to. The second thing we looked at was contracting with a private vendor. We hooked up with a vendor who oversees a large 911 facility in one of the local neighboring cities, and see if he'd be willing to assist us in writing questions that would be specific to our community and to our town, and then even be able to take that possibly a step further and incorporate some sort of software with it. And we also looked at using some professional companies and professional software, including PowerPhone and Priority Dispatch, who we use now for emergency medical dispatch. The fire department.
Do you have that preference, Chief?
Which one we use?
Of those three options, or are there other options?
Well, those are the three options. The big factor that we're going to get into is the cost factor associated with it. That's the biggest factor, I would say.
Okay.
So I have just a few concerns with it. So if we don't make our own questions, that would be the cheapest way, or the most inexpensive way.
Right.
And we can tailor them, to the needs here. If we choose to go the next step up, it gives us potential we could use a card set, incorporate that into the system, and then from there, it gives us room to grow in years to come if we want to go to the state-of-the-art, computerized Pro QA system. But the cost for doing that is somewhat over the top right now. The cost to upgrade the computerized system of that is like in the area of $70,000 plus to do the state-of-the-art one. So the thought was, if we don't do the option where we make our own questions, then the next best one, financial-wise, would be to go with the card set, the EFD. We have EMD for emergency medical dispatch. We would use EFD, emergency fire dispatch card set. So the deal we have to work out with that is the funding. The fire department's willing to come up with some of the costs, to share part of the cost to get it started. However, the remaining cost for us just to implement that, to train and certify our personnel, we're estimating at approximately almost $9,000, about $8,800 just for the startup. In addition to that, we have some reoccurring costs of approximately $13,000 every 2 years for continuing education and testing, and just to maintain those certifications. Some other concerns or issues that we have to work through with that are some labor-related issues, because this is another added task that would be put onto the dispatchers. So there could be, requests for compensation from them regarding that. We're also required to do quality assurance reviews of all the different disciplines. So right now, we just do the medical side of it, so we just do the medical quality assurance reviews. So with this, we also have to incorporate now quality assurance reviews of the fire, on the fire side. And there's also concern of, on the occasions when we only have one dispatcher working, if they're going to be able to handle all these different tasks that they're doing at the same time. Because if you don't perform the emergency fire dispatch pretty much verbatim or the way it's set up, then you don't pass the quality assurance. But at the times when there's only one dispatcher and they're trying to field multiple calls and dispatch police, fire, EMS, so there'd be exceptions to that. And the program does allow for exceptions to it. We just don't want to get into the, I'm worried that there could be a problem that the exception might be more of the norm for us, because we're not overstaffed. There isn't someone that could just take over that. So that's currently where we are with it. It's not something that we're budgeted for, especially with the recent cuts that we had to make and the reductions that we made. So the question is, whether the town is willing to make the funds necessary for us to implement it. If we have the funding for it, we certainly implement it to the best of our ability, and then we'd have to decide at what level do we want to do the card sets. Do we want to, I don't imagine we want to go right away to the most top of the line with that. And I've been in discussion with Tony Genovese, the finance director, on it, and he acknowledges we don't have the fundings for it on our side, but he'd be willing to work with us and work with me to find a way to possibly achieve that. That's the way we want to go. So that's where we are with it. There's a couple of different options.
How long, what's the normal length of time for dispatch to get, that we're looking to, the optimum sweet spot for someone, for a call to come in, for the fire to be notified and the proper information conveyed to them? Is that 30 seconds, a minute? What's the target we're shooting for, and what additional information are they looking for, and how much will that increase that target zone?
Right, I don't think it's so much the time frame, I think it's the information that they're getting, and that's what they're looking for. So for added information, the dispatchers have no problem getting, dispatching them out and telling them that there's a call, but then they're looking for added information to follow up with that, so that they'll have that by the time they get to the firehouse.
What's an example of something that they're looking for that's not being conveyed?
Right, so if, there's all different scenarios, I guess, but say if there's a rollover, are there people trapped, are there wires involved, is there a fluid spill, is there a gas leak, how
And that
many injuries?
normally wouldn't
You would be able to communicate that?
conveyed to...
Some of it's conveyed, but sometimes you can't get as much as you want, because at the same time they're trying to answer all those questions, they're also trying to answer multiple 911 calls coming in
Right.
for the same thing, so they can't. And then while they're answering the 911 call, they're trying to dispatch at the same time too, the police, and dispatch the fire.
I'm not trying to minimize the complexity or the importance of it either. And if the dispatcher feels they need something to help them, then I would obviously want to hear that from you.
Right.
But
No,
to me, it sounds like it would just be an ongoing, my initial reaction was, well, if they need the information as it comes in, we provide it to them. And if they need to know other people trapped, the dispatcher would be able to say, as soon as possible, yes or no, or there's a rollover, or there's 4 cars, or there's flames, or whatever. I mean, to me, that seems like what would be the essence of the call. I mean,
Right,
I'm not doing it every day, and I'm ignorant to what this. But I would think that the dispatcher would provide whatever information he or she had as it came in.
Right, and they do, and what they're looking to get is additional information, as much more to pull out information that the dispatcher might not have asked or might not have.
And that's when you
known
said,
to
what
ask.
questions do you want additionally asked? And,
Yes.
And that was
Right.
met with some reluctance by the fire department?
No, it wasn't met with, well, whatever platform we decide to go to, that's what probably the discrepancy is, or that's what we're trying to work through. We could have one platform where we just have a set of questions, like we said, and they devise the questions and we use that, or we could go to the professional side and get, the card sets that guide you through that. But when you do that, there's the costs associated
Yeah.
with it.
I get it.
So right now, the question is being asked just based on their experience, but the card set is a group of physical cards, and it's a flow chart.
Right.
Is there a car accident? Are there people in the car?
No,
Is it and then you go through and you flip the cards, right? Or the computer version, which
Goes
is,
A this way.
right,
B-
or the
I
computer
get it.
version, which is much more expensive.
Is
And
on our own.
so,
That's what I was, that's.
priority dispatch, is that the presentation you and I saw?
Correct.
The computer version was underwhelming to me. I don't know how you
Correct.
felt about that. I wasn't that enamored and thought that, I mean, I'm not a dispatcher, I'm just saying from my observation of how they were explaining it, it didn't seem like that was gonna
Yeah, I mean,
solve what our problem
the
is.
chief came up with that same, decision. I mean, we don't generate enough calls to even
Justify that.
justify it.
I mean, we have other expenses that seem a little more worthwhile than spending over $100,000 on something that's not.
I mean, the general question was to give something to the dispatchers, so they would, because they're not, we don't take a lot of fire calls here, so they're not fire dispatchers to the sense where they get a lot of calls like, they are very good police dispatchers because they deal with the police on a daily basis, a lot more than they deal with the fire. So when it comes to a fire call, that may happen once or twice a week, they maybe not be as in tune to asking the right questions, and that's what the cards do. They just
Right, but
they
it's-
steer
There's some way to
like you said,
develop
they
this
steer
on
them to
our
the right
own.
direction.
Well,
Instead of
I mean, if
putting it on
fire
the ground.
wants a certain line of questioning, why can't they provide us parameters of what they're looking for? You have a rollover, this is what the information they want. I mean, if they're not, these guys don't have the experience to get to all that, why wouldn't they do that?
Well, we discussed it.
Is there
We
a,
can discuss it again. I can discuss
I mean, is there a
it
reason
again.
why they didn't want to do that? Do you know?
Only because I think that, the other program might be somewhat more professional, and it comes with some certifications with it to cover you, but just having some certain questions in place would definitely be a step in the right direction of what we've been trying to do. That's pretty much what
But
we're
with the
trying to do.
experiences that they have as from the fire department from doing this for so many years, and with the experience we have with some of the professionals that we have being in the dispatches, and that's something that they possibly would collectively put together or somehow work together on, so that it's in our best interest to have that information, or to
Yeah.
have a set of questions instead of paying whatever it is, $100,000.
And that was our first suggestion. That's where we started with it when we first kicked off.
Unless
Then
there's
it led-
something that I'm missing that,
But
I mean,
I'm sensing that you're going for the middle of the road approach. That would be your preference.
Well, I was going towards the middle of the road approach because the first step of making our own questions was met with some resistance. So
By-
I'm okay with it, to start anyway and see if that worked, and if that was an enhancement. If it wasn't, then maybe go to the next step. The fire department didn't really prefer to do that and wanted to go to the next step. So rather than go to the top of the line, try to work together
you
and
were trying to-
come somewhere in the middle. Is
Yeah,
what I was trying to do. But I have no problem if, at least to get the ball rolling, make questions and start with that.
What is your dispatch model?
Our dispatch,
I'm asking, I know they're here,
Yeah.
I'm asking, I'm not trying to ignore, but
Yeah.
if you want
They
to
have a
speak,
lot of-
we don't
earlier,
want to put them on the spot either.
pretty much, there were concerns about it.
Would concerns
yeah.
positively or negatively?
Concerns negative, some positive, that the computerized system is state of the art. If that ever happened, that might, really work well, but it's like I said, it's the Cadillac plan.
right,
The card sets, they already have one card set for medical dispatch. Now you're gonna have another card set for fire dispatch, so then you're gonna have all these kind of card sets, and you're still trying to answer the phone and dispatch and all the
Right.
things that I had mentioned before. So I know that's concerning to them, and it's also, very concerning to them that if they don't abide by the card set rules, or they're not able to, I'm sure that they're concerned about what ramifications they would have to, would be associated with that. But as far as just, having some questions, that, a few simple questions that would pertain to the common fire clause that we have now, I don't think that would be met with, any reluctance. Because with that, there wouldn't be any, they would do the best they could, and if they have time to ask the questions, they would certainly ask them. And sometimes you might have more time, and you could ask more questions. Sometimes, when everything happens at once, you don't have time to ask all the questions, and, they do the best they could with the scenario that they have, and they've always done that, and they've always been professional, and they'll continue to do that.
It seems to me that that job is a very reactionary job. It seems like, call comes in like that it's probably more instinct than it is stopping to hit a computer program to make sure they ask the right questions, one and subset A, B, C, and D. I've watched them, but
Right.
I would think that it's got to be very difficult when you have something like that happening, and you're answering 911 calls and police calls and dispatching and doing 4 or 5 things at once that you have to stop and be guided by a computer printout. It seems to me like there'd be a certain lag from going from the call to putting up the program on a screen, or just seems to me that it's a job that needs to be.
So are you asking us, or are we being asked to vote on something on that, to authorize you to pursue something, or is it just
No, I just want to get your feelings on it,
Uh-huh.
where you're at, and mainly I think the big issue with it is the funding part of it.
Right.
If we do choose to go, or if I said, hey, I think the best thing is to start with the fire cards, are we going to be able to fund such a thing? No. The fire department, like I said, they offered to pay some of it, but we figured out the cost. There are other costs that are associated with it. We don't have it in our budget. It's not going to happen before the end of this fiscal year. We didn't incorporate it in our budget,
Right.
in the upcoming budget, and that's something we'd have to work on getting the funding for it. I discussed with Tony. Something that would really not have any funding impact would be to start with devising our own questions and start with that. At least it would be an improvement, and then go from there. And if that doesn't work, or we can come up with the funding and move to the next step, then so be it.
I would suggest that you do that, and if you come back and say, look, we really need to, I'm not opposed to doing that. We'll try to come up with a
Right.
recommendation, but
Yeah.
I don't want to overwhelm the dispatch with more work than they have already. I don't want to go back and be yelled at because our budget, we're asking for stuff that's not in the
Right.
budget.
It just seems to me, after what we went through
Right.
with the budgetary constraints that were thrust upon us at the a few months back, it seems to me that we might want to think about trying going to the least point of resistance first.
Will that cause problems across the street for you and the chief over there? Not problems, but that's
Yeah, not
that's a strong
problems.
word.
There'll be, I'm sure we'll have
A
some
surprise
discussion about it,
Okay,
but
all right.
but if that's,
We'll
we'll
keep us
decide
in
that
the
we'll
loop.
start with that, and
All right.
then we'll discuss it further and
Okay.
see how it works out, and then move forward from that.
We should have asked him to submit questions that he
Yeah, I'll speak to the fire chief and tell him that's, what our decision is at this point to do that, and give that a try, and then move on from there. That's good.
Is that okay?
Yeah, well, that's okay. I mean, it's just a PO request at the same time. Next topic is a bid waiver regarding new patrol vehicles. So as approved in the recent budget, I'd like to move forward the purchase of 2 new patrol vehicles. Last year, we didn't get any, so we are a little bit behind the 8 ball, and our mileage is high. We're trying to get back into some routine with that.
Although Ray work is magic.
Yeah, the two new cars, we're looking to get 2 Ford SUV police interceptors. Like we've had really good luck with those, and they've been really reliable in our rural community here. I discussed it with Tony, the finance director, and he gave the go-ahead to do the purchase orders, or at least get it in the work for this model year, so we avoid the price increase. So we want to try to do that soon.
What's high mileage for the police vehicles?
Some of them are in excess of 100,000 miles, and not counting the idling miles, hours. So, yeah, so our cars are way up there now. For the past several years, we've gone through the company MHQ, who again this year was awarded the state bid contract, and we've been utilizing them with no problem to buy the cars and also to outfit our cars. They're dependable and reliable. So as in the past, I'm just looking for the board's approval to forego the bid process and accept the state of Connecticut bid contracting price for the cars as was honored by MHQ. And if I get that, I'll submit it to Tony, and he'll put it to the Board of Selectmen.
Motion?
Well, he's not done his report. Do we have to make a motion for that individually?
Separately.
Okay, I'll make a motion then to grant the chief's request as articulated.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous.
Quick update on the phone system project. The aging phone system that we had has been upgraded and replaced. The project was completed during the middle of last month. The old system was removed and replaced with all new hardware and new equipment, and we're happy to have it. It's been working fine. We had one recent graduation, another one coming up. Officer Lynch, this past Friday on June 2nd, held his DARE program graduation at Beecher Road School. Myself, the deputy chief, and also First Selectman-elect Heller were there for the event. It went well. He had a guest speaker from UConn athlete was there. And I just want to recognize Officer Lynch for his completion of another successful year at Beecher. And the Amity High School graduation is scheduled for a week from tomorrow, June 14th, Wednesday, June 14th, commencing at 4 p.m. We'll have sufficient coverage for that, for security and traffic, and myself, the deputy and lieutenant will be on site for that. And the last topic in my report was from Memorial Day. Last Monday, the 29th, the town's annual Memorial Day ceremony was held. I attended with a contingent from the Police Department Honor Guard who posted the flags and colors during the event. Representing the Honor Guard for the PD that day was the Deputy Chief, Sergeants Thomas, Capiello, and Scott, along with Officer Lynch. It went well as usual. The weather didn't cooperate, but it was in the gym, and our presence was greatly appreciated by the community and by the veterans that were there. So, and that's it for the report.
Motion to approve the chief's report?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Thanks, chief.
Under personnel matters, the overlap sergeant position, as I reported last month, the union and I were in agreement to modify the hours, and we did so. And so, as I mentioned before, we eliminated the 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift with a schedule that now rotates that sergeant between midnights and evenings to cover the regularly scheduled days off of those particular sergeants. We started doing it several weeks ago on May 7th, and we'll continue it to the end of this bid cycle, which is over on June 24th. It's been working well, and the union agreed to try it again, so we get another full. This was a partial cycle when we started, so we'll do the whole full 3-month cycle. So, and with a different sergeant, actually, he's going to bid that position, so somebody else will get a try for it. And that'll cover from June 25th through the end of September 24th. So that's where we are with that. And under personnel matters, I have received a request to carry over vacation from Officer Mike Luzzy to carry over 4 unused vacation days into the next year. He's been working midnights, and up until recently, there's only been 2 people pretty much every midnight shift. He as a new officer, he only had 5 vacation days, so he couldn't take a whole week. He'd have to take to spread them out a little bit. He'd have to take single days, and pretty much it's been our practice, although we make exceptions, to not routinely grant single days when it would cause overtime. And in his case, it would almost always cause overtime. So he didn't have the opportunity and didn't use and worked with us and didn't take some of those days. So he's requesting to carry them over, four single days over into the next year. And now with our, since we put another person on midnights and with this rotating sergeant helping as part of minimum manpower, shouldn't become a problem in the future, so we're good with
Move
that.
to allow the vacation days to be transferred for,
I would, yeah. Okay, I'm good with it.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Second.
You know, 2 seconds. Budget?
Nothing,
Nothing. Old business?
nothing.
With regard to new business, Chief, I'd ask that you consider, you, Ray, and Jeff, coming up with a plan, short-term, midterm, and long-term, regarding expenditures. I think that with a new first selectman starting very soon, we should probably give the Board of Finance and the first selectman an idea of what we're looking to do in the upcoming future, financially. And I think that would make sense. I know that we talked about some modifications that should be done immediately, the carpets, and Tony seemed he was willing to help with that. So, I also was here last night because I wanted to, in case anyone asked me, I wanted to get an idea of, refresh my memory, which carpets were in bad shape, and
Oh, okay.
they all are.
Mhm.
And I was also surprised that we still have the smaller sized toilets. I thought those were replaced, but,
Some of them were and some of them weren't.
so I'm hoping that those can be changed. There's no reason why that should occur here.
All right.
Is that something that, I mean, who would change those? Public Works?
Public Works, well,
Are they-
that request was made over a year ago.
Shouldn't really be very expensive to do that. I mean,
No, and
Probably $100 toilet, right?
I don't know how that works, but
We'll look into it again.
Just a thought.
it's hard to get up after you try and sit on one.
TMI.
Yeah. So, we have nothing to vote on in executive session, handle executive session.
Motion to adjourn and move into traffic?
I'm sorry.
What's that?
Is there a second?
Do you have a second?
Yes.
All those in favor? Okay. Moving to the Woodbridge Traffic Authority. Anyone here from the public wishes to be heard? And we do have correspondence? I saw the letter, or that was just a notice to...
No.
This letter was now continued to July 11th.
Okay, so that's...
Yeah.
We have a couple of traffic matters, streetlight policy.
So at the April 12th meeting of the Board of Selectmen, they voted to request the Legal Traffic Authority to enact guidelines for the installation of streetlights in town when they're requested by residents. So Betsy Yago came up with a draft policy based upon similar policies that were adopted in other parts of the country. And it sets in motion, I guess, some procedures when the town receives a request from the public. And that's pretty much what happened. It came up and there wasn't a procedure in place of how to deal with it. This policy that was created governs the installation of streetlights to just pretty much for pedestrian safety and traffic safety. And it clearly states that it's not for the purpose of illuminating private property for security purposes. For security purposes, that's the responsibility of the property owner or the homeowner. At last month's meeting, you asked that the draft be reviewed by town council, and I did. It was reviewed by Attorney Weiner, and he was okay with the draft. And I also forwarded a copy to Warren Connors, the Public Works Director, because he's part of the procedure with that. And he reviewed it, and we discussed it, and he was good with it. He had no problem with it. Thought it was a good concept to get in place. And Jeff, Lieutenant, the Deputy Chief, and myself, we all discussed it, and we didn't really see any problem with the wording of it. And pretty much,
So when a
Yeah.
request is made, what's the process?
they'd have to fill out this, go through the whole
Right, they fill
process.
out And they turn it in, and what happens?
And then we review it all, and if they meet the criteria for it, then the town would,
We referred once before up to some, gosh, I'm trying, somebody did a study for us, a traffic study or some assessment, and is that part of this process? I'm trying to think what board we sent it to.
if it was with a traffic study, we could recommend it.
Right.
And we could do it. These are, I think this is, a lot of this is for requests from the public, from a resident.
Yeah, no, that's exactly who it was.
Yeah,
They came in
requests,
and wanted to get street lights down by Litchfield Turnpike, and you remember, there was 2 residents that wanted to get street light. We asked,
Basically, it was on Hazel Terrace.
was that Hazel
It
Terrace?
was years ago, I think,
It
too.
wasn't that long
I
ago.
remember that.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. I haven't been on that long.
Couple of years? Well,
Well, it was a couple years ago.
I know what you're talking about, and, yeah, a traffic study would be warranted if it was, a safety issue. If we had to look into a safety issue. Sometimes a lot of the requests we get are just because they want more lighting because there was a burglary in the area or something like that. And that, you don't need to, you need to have a traffic study done. So it'll be by case by case.
That was the impetus
Oh, we'll
behind
handle
this.
Well, the traffic
Right,
authority.
so part of our approval process is we could ask for some sort of a study.
That could be part of it, but also we would have someone assigned to something like that?
Yeah, if we
Or
need
would
to
it
get.
be a collective
It would be,
work in
it would be
progress?
collective between the police department, the public works director, and if we had to assign somebody to do some kind of traffic study or gather some information, we would from our end, whatever we had to do on our end.
And ultimately, it would have to be approved by the traffic authority, or the commission, or something that could be done internal?
No, it'd have to go through the traffic authority, I believe, for this, because that's who's
I mean,
approving it.
But it says that the town of Woodbridge shall not install streetlights for the purpose of illuminating private property
Right.
for security purposes. So if someone wants more light,
That would be
then they have to install more light. So
exact.
why would you get a traffic study?
No, it wouldn't, it's not for private property.
It doesn't, right, so.
You wouldn't need a traffic study in that case.
Right. So
It didn't warrant it, it wouldn't warrant it. So it's just like, it's a case-by-case basis depending on what the need is for the light. Whoever puts in for the light, why do they want it? And then you go from there.
okay.
But we wouldn't entertain it for
That's my
security
point.
purposes.
That why would you even entertain it? Why would it be case by case? If it's for private property, then
You guys are talking about public property, she's talking about private.
Private.
Right.
Yeah, no, no.
I thought you were addressing private property.
No, I was just, any request, period. I mean, this is only for public, am I right?
Right.
Nothing to do
Yeah,
with private.
yeah.
But any request made, I was just wanted to know what the process was, or
Oh,
how you
okay.
planned on handling it.
So that's where we are with that. If we're okay with it, I don't know if the board wants to
They could read it, table it.
discuss it.
Want to wait till next meeting?
Yeah.
All right, we can put it over to next meeting.
Is that your last item, Chief?
No, there's a couple of those. Road race.
Yeah, Woodbridge Road Race, Recreation Director John Adamich is requesting permission from the Traffic Authority to hold its 36th annual road race on October 7th, 8 to 12 in the morning. And it's the same route that we always use. As usual, it'll be well-staffed and with cones and signage. Never had a problem before, and don't anticipate a problem. Just a formality. So you'd probably vote on that to approve.
I move to approve the coverage for the road race.
Second.
Well,
All those in favor?
Thank you.
Pedestrian crossing area upgrades. Connecticut DOT is initiating a statewide project to upgrade and improve pedestrian crossways at uncontrolled locations on locally owned roads, so not the state roads, but town roads. And by uncontrolled locations, they're referring to locations that have a crosswalk, but they have no signal lights or stop signs. We really only have 2 of them in town here, one across the street in front of the town hall, and the other one on Newton Road at the front entrance to the Amity High School. The upgrade will consist of just making sure that the signage is up to date and conforms with any new DOT standards, and that they would also be willing to upgrade any pavement painting or markings that might need to be done. It'll all be done at no cost to the town. As I said, they sent out the request, they sent it to town hall, it was forwarded over to me, so I just presented to you. There's the 2 spots, and there's no cost to the town, so probably
Motion
worth it
again?
to take a look at it.
We need a
Do you need a
motion.
motion for that?
A motion or just your either way, or tacit approval, I'll fill out the form and send it in,
I don't
whatever.
think we need
I
to
think
vote on that.
you have our, well, I'm assuming you have mine, how's that?
Yes, I think you have our approval.
Have your approval?
Yes.
All right, good. The Woodbridge Village, that was proposed down there on Bradley Road near 69. The Woodbridge Village Group has requested another 2-year extension for the Bradley Road project that they had planned. The same type of extension was granted about 2 years ago. The project's still on hold and it hasn't been going anywhere, and that's the reason for their extension. The state DOT has no problem granting the extension, but they just gave us a courtesy call, and they wanted it to go before the legal traffic authority to make sure that you were in concurrence with them. And as long as you are, they'll grant the extension like they did before. And that'll be the end of it for another 2 years.
If it's a motion, I make a motion to allow for the extension as requested.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you.
And just to follow up on the Dillon Road and the Bradley Road traffic studies during the month of May, as I had indicated several months ago, we're going to try to do, we were able to team up with Yukon Technology Transfer Center and utilize some more sophisticated traffic equipment that they have. The equipment measures not only vehicle count and speed, but also the types of vehicles, and that was a big issue for both of those 2 locations that had come into play. Sergeant Rizzuti worked with Yukon staff on that, and the reps came down, and Public Works pitched in and helped install some of the equipment. It was on Dillon Road for several days, and while we had it, when we got done there, we put it down on Bradley Road near the animal control facility there, and to see what results we got with that, coupled with results we had gotten with our Easy Stats equipment several months ago. So the equipment has since been picked up, and it's all at Yukon getting downloaded. And when we get that information, Sergeant Rizzuti will compare that to the
There's something on Dillon Road right now, isn't there?
Yeah, so, and that's also the speed awareness monitoring trailer that we got. It's finally been operational. The graphics were put out a couple weeks ago. We had it out on Center Road, then we moved it right up to Dillon Road, where we have the complaints there, and got good feedback from the resident there, where it's
I never
located.
complained.
Yeah, and so, long story short, it's all operational, and it's up and running, so now with the nice weather, you should be seeing it around, try to make it highly visible. And that's it for,
I have a question about the boxes that were painted on 69. Are those working as expected? Are they doing what they're supposed to be doing?
they're working out expected. The traffic down there is just so congested that sometimes, it's just, I think that whole area is just so congested that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I know on the evening shift, those guys have been going down there a lot.
Is there a long-range plan for dealing with that congestion?
Yeah, the state has a bunch of, they have like a very long-range plan, and then they have an immediate plan, and they have like a 5-year plan. There's going to be a lot of work going down.
The way they're situated, there's only room for one car in between the 2 boxes.
It's just
Don't get stuck in there.
yeah,
It's like musical chairs.
that's it for traffic.
The motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second.